we were talking about how Roberto Osuna has been, well, he's been pretty low key this spring. He's been hard to find. He's pitched in a week and a half. He's pitched in one Grapefruit League game, pitched in a minor league game. I did not, you know, pitch all that well in the Grapefruit League game. He is a closer, though. And, depending on how you feel, if you're a closer, some guys will tell you they need 7 or 8 innings to get ready. Well, he's right on track for that. Um, how much of a concern for you would Roberto Osuna be? Because, as Stephen pointed out, for a 22-year-old guy, we take him remarkably for granted, and we just sort of assume that he is always going to be there.
Yeah, I'd be concerned, Jeff. I think, and I go back to the playoffs last year when he had the issue creep up in the wild card game. I mean, obviously, he's a guy that had Tommy John very early in his career, and you start adding up these different data points, and you had a little bit of a health concern in the postseason last year. You've got the uneven performance against Italy in the WBC, the rather scarce appearances during spring training, and you add them all up, and in isolation, each individual issue might not raise a red flag, but I think collectively they do. And if the question right now is Osuna ready to close out a tight one-run game on opening day? I'm a little skeptical of that right now. And this is obviously part of the club, Jeff, that's I think thin in general. It's not been a strength. They had to sort of figure out the bullpen as the year went along last year. They had one of the highest totals of bullpen losses of any team in baseball last season. So, again, you add up the whole context here, and I think it's totally legitimate if I'm a Jays fan right now, if I'm a little concerned about Roberto Osuna.
Yeah, that said, a lot of those bullpen losses were early, right? And that has been an April issue for this team. You're right, and they have kind of made it up as they go along. But again, one thing I wonder about, John, is until he will get the ball if they need a closer opening day. I guarantee you, because he's their best option. I guess you could argue he's their only option, unless you think Grilly can close games. But I'm not sure you'd want to go there more often than you have to. But what about the notion that guys, and I certainly have seen this, where closers are not the same pitcher when they're not in that situation, where there's just if you put them into a game where the game is not on the line, sometimes you don't see the same thing. And I'm wondering if that's a little bit of what we're seeing with Osuna right now.
Perhaps, and it's a very good point, Stephen, that in spring training or any time of year, that if it's a non-safe situation, there's not high adrenaline, sometimes you do not get the best showing from that pitcher. I totally agree with that. Although I do think that obviously in the moment of you're in Jalisco, Mexico, pitching for your country, as he was, and that inning really went sideways on him against Italy when Mexico did not record an out. Really, that was the difference between them advancing and not in that first round. That to me is a bit of a concern, and I think too the general preparedness this particular spring. I think the WBC and you guys both know what an advocate I am with the tournament. I do think that for relievers in particular, it can be tricky because you're trying to get your work in, you're trying to get sharp, and then for those 2 weeks or for however long you're involved in the tournament, your manager is using you in accordance with the circumstances of the games. I think that makes it a bit of a concern, and that can lead to irregular work. And I think that's been the case for Osuna. I think you see some closers, and Mariano Rivera was legendary for this. He reported sort of when he wanted to. He pitched when he wanted to in spring training, and on April 1st, he was ready. The K-Rod has sort of claimed that same level of privilege with some degree of success and some not success early in the season, as was the case for K-Rod last year for the Tigers in the month of April. So I think closers, as you point out, guys, they can be finicky at this time of year. But I think in this case for Osuna, the fact that he had to answer the bell in March and really didn't with Mexico, I think leads me to be a bit more concerned than if it was just a normal spring of work, consistent sort of days of rest during March. I mean, this has been a very irregular spring training for Osuna in multiple ways.
Yeah, no,